Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward and uplift others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as you know, you can hear this show anywhere you get your podcasts. If you happen to listen on Apple Podcasts, we invite you to leave a rate and review. Otherwise, if you listen on any other platform, we also encourage you to send us an email with your thoughts and feedback at road to rediscovery podcast at gmail.com. That's road to rediscovery podcast at gmail.com, and we'll give you a shout out in a future episode. My special guest is an eating disorder recovery coach who truly has a heart for service. She helps her clients navigate through anorexia and other eating disorders using compassion, empathy, transparency, and unconditional love. Let's welcome Julia Trehane to the show. Hey, Julia, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's absolutely amazing to be here. I'm so pleased. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We're equally honored to have you on. So Julia, can we start off by just, if you can give us a glimpse, right, into your journey and what led to your inspiration behind you pursuing this type of work and helping others through this illness?
Sure. Yeah. I lived in anorexia for 40 years.
Mm,
It started when I was very young. In
hmm
fact, one of my earliest memories is being about 4 years old. And there was another little girl who was also called Julia who played in our road with me. And
hmm
she was a week younger than me. And so
hmm
she was known as Little Julia and I was known as Big Julia.
mm,
But although I didn't really know about body size then, and I wasn't actually big, I was just a week older,
hmm
it felt wrong and it felt bad. And I remember not liking being called Big Julia. And I used to say, I'm not Big Julia, I don't want to be Big Julia.
yeah.
And that was sort of like one of my earliest memories of not being
hmm
happy with my body size. And I also had a difficult relationship with my father,
hmm
who was, I'm sure he was only doing what he knew and the best he could do with the knowledge he had
Yeah.
and his own conditioning. But he was a highly critical and judgmental man.
Mm,
And I couldn't ever do right. I was never quite good enough.
mm,
And I tried to stay out of his way a lot of the time. And I realised sort of towards the age of 9 or 10 that the smaller I was, the less I was seen. And the other thing he was really strict about was not showing emotions. I wasn't allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to make a fuss. And in fact, if I cried, I was told, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
oh, wow.
I know, but it was actually quite common then.
hmm
And I don't think he really meant harm by it. But when I started to realise that the smaller I was, the less I was seen, I started trying to eat less. And this had the welcome side effect of restricting my emotions. I didn't really feel as much and I didn't need to feel. So by the time I was sort of 11, 12, I kind of developed into full-blown anorexia.
Mm,
Um, but I felt like I was winning. I felt like I didn't have to feel, I didn't have to eat,
yeah.
and I was managing to stay small and out of his way, which felt just incredible.
Mm, mm,
And it also felt a bit like a superpower. The
mm,
whole feeling empty thing felt really powerful
yeah.
and kind of addictive. And I sort of carried on like
Interesting.
this. I realised that I would get in a lot of trouble if they found out.
Right.
So I wore lots and lots of jumpers and things and used to make excuses at school as to why in PE I had to wear a tracksuit, and I would
Hmm.
fake notes to to the school from my parents saying that I
Mm.
didn't participate in PE for this reason and that reason.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, by the time I was 15, the school had kind of had enough of my excuses and made me do PE normally in normal PE kit with the rest of the class, and that kind of revealed that I was pretty undernourished, and
Hmm.
phone calls went home and doctors were called, and it all just kind of went horrible for a while, and I was
Mm.
forced to weight restore. But my parents were also going through a pretty messy divorce at the time as well, and
I see. Hmm.
there was a recession on and they couldn't sell the house, and so it was all
Mm.
a bit of a scrappy, yucky time. And so
Yeah.
they were kind of really involved in their own issues. So although I started eating, it was still quite restrictive, and there was no healing mentally at all.
No.
I left home at 16 and kind of breathed a sigh of relief. It was a lot easier when I wasn't at home, and things were pretty good. I was trying to balance paying rent and still going to school and having part-time work and stuff. And I was just kind of too busy to be worrying about food. So I
Hmm.
was eating, but it was still quite restricted. I
Hmm.
only ate certain things.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
at 18, I met my husband, and things were really good then for a while. I was still restricting, but I felt
Okay.
safe. I felt okay. I wasn't afraid to be seen. I still was pretty emotionless, and I had some children, and my first son had anaphylaxis to egg, which is a life-threatening allergy, and
Mm.
we had to carry an EpiPen and everything.
Mm.
And this made me really, really obsessive about what he was eating because it could kill him.
Mm. Right.
But
Right.
I took it so far. I became crazy obsessive about preparing everything from scratch, making sure nothing that could hurt him. And I got to the, like, everything had to be like clean eating and no processed
Right. The
food. And
process. Right.
I took it really, really far, far, far
Mm.
more than I needed to.
Mm.
And so that sort of became more restrictive. And then
Hmm.
when I'd had well, I got pregnant with my third child, and I was restricting quite a lot more then. And I'd also discovered exercise. And so I was exercising a lot. And I had him like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was home by lunchtime, and I went for a
Wow.
run. And then I did the school run for the other two, and then I was walking the dogs, and I was just like really, really on the go. I didn't rest at all, having had a baby that day.
Mm.
I was back in my jeans in 3 days, which everyone praised me for and validated
Yeah.
me for and said, "Oh, wow, you're amazing, and how do you do
Yeah.
it all? You're like Superwoman."
Yeah.
This just praised the behavior and made it like, wow, this is making me look amazing. People love it, and I must be doing really, really well. So that just kind of carried on, this just existence of restriction, exercise, restriction, exercise.
Yeah.
I was always following the latest like fad and craze of a keto diets, and
Yeah.
excuse the phone ringing in the
Oh, that's it. That's
background.
okay.
Keto diet, and then I discovered intermittent fasting, which is
Right.
just the most wonderful thing if you've got anorexia, because it means you
Mm.
don't have to eat at all, and you can just tell people, "Oh, I'm fasting."
Ah, I see. I see.
So it's the
Interesting.
greatest excuse not to eat, and
Yeah.
it meant that I also didn't have to tell all the lies that I used to have to tell people all the time, saying, "Oh, I've eaten at so and so's," or "I had this, so I'm not hungry now." Um,
Mm.
and this just carried on, and I was just existing in this tense, people pleasing, perfectionistic, OCD, restricted world. Um, Never really feeling happy. My children used to tell me I had a heart of stone, and
Really?
yeah.
Oh my.
I was the mum at the school things where all the other mums were crying because it was so lovely that their
Yeah.
children were singing these songs when they left the primary school and things, and I was there dry eyed.
Looking at your watch. No, I'm kidding.
um,
uh,
and in lockdown, my father died.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And it brought back, kind of brought to the surface all those restricted emotions from my childhood, all the ones I'd never felt, I'd never processed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I felt like I was spinning completely out of control. I
Hmm.
didn't know what to do. So
Yeah.
my answer to this was to restrict more. So I
Hmm.
did, and it didn't work. And so I restricted more and more and more until I just completely stopped eating.
Hmm.
And I got really sick really, really fast. Like
Oh yeah.
I was kicked out of my gym because I kept passing out. Um, I would like go out on a run and then sort of like find myself, or somebody would find me passed out on the ground.
Oh my
And
goodness. Wow. Yeah,
and
you had no fuel, and you're
no,
exercising.
no, I was
Yeah.
exercising for at least 8 hours a day at this point.
Oh my.
And I was just trying to stop these thoughts just spinning, and I really really thought I was going mad. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know
Right.
how to manage them.
Hmm.
And that mask that you can put on at the end of the day when people come home from school and work that pretends you're okay, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stop the feelings. I couldn't pretend I was okay. And I was so weak. I had to stop
Yes.
work because I just couldn't do it anymore. And I got to the point where I just didn't know what to do. I couldn't see a future. I couldn't see what to do. And I
Hmm.
decided that literally the world would just be so much better if I wasn't in it because I didn't know how to carry on.
Oh my.
And I got everything together to take my life. And I set aside a time and I was just about to do it when nobody was here. And
Hmm.
something inside me, and I think it's the part of me that's a mum, said, no, don't be so selfish. You can't leave this legacy to your children. This is the worst thing you could ever do. They don't deserve
Yes.
that. They can't have that hanging over their futures.
Right. Right.
And I just broke down and
Mhm.
I asked for help. And it was the
Yes.
first time I'd wanted help. I'd always thought that admitting I needed help was a weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never realised that showing any vulnerability was strong. I thought that was an absolute weakness.
Mm. Amazing. It sounds like you had this really life-defining pivotal moment when you started to consider maybe the world would be better without me. Then you thought about the legacy you were leaving your children, and that seemed to really take hold of you, in terms of uh, coming to terms that you need help.
Yeah.
Um, and now you originally thought the act of needing help meant weakness.
Hmm.
Now, at the moment you were actually considering getting help, what was your thoughts regarding weakness? Did you still feel that it was weakness, or did you believe it was weakness and just put it aside and said, you know what, it is weakness, but I need this? Or did you just all of a sudden realize, hey, it's not weakness. This is something I truly need to do.
Oh no, I didn't realise that. I thought I was a
Mhm.
complete failure.
Okay.
I hated every aspect of myself. I just thought I
Okay.
was completely worthless.
Mm,
Um, but I do have some absolutely incredible friends
yeah.
who dragged me to see a therapist,
Hmm.
who kind of helped a bit, but she
Hmm.
wasn't really specialised in eating disorders. And
Hmm.
by this time, my husband was like much more aware of what was going on because he
Yeah.
hadn't known me without an eating disorder. So he thought my behaviour was pretty normal.
I see.
And he's also a farmer. And so that was our harvest season. So he was out all the time when I
Right.
was like at my lowest point. And so
Yeah.
we didn't really see much of each other. So he found out what was going on. And
Hmm.
being a man, wanting to fix, which is
Of
what he
course.
likes to do.
Right.
He was
Right.
like, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm going to book a holiday.
Right. Right.
So to take me away and help me relax and just take me away from real life,
Hmm.
which I didn't want to go. I was really scared. I was living in total fear all the time. I was so anxious. But I did go, and it wasn't the worst idea in the world. It did give
Hmm.
me a break from reality and
Hmm.
allowed me time to start researching how I could get out of this, how I could recover.
I see. I see. What was it you were afraid of, Julia?
Everything. Just
Did you feel? Uh-huh.
I was just in fear of everything. I was scared of talking to people because I didn't think I had anything worthwhile to say. I thought they'd just hate me. I hated how I looked because I thought I was like grossly overweight when
Mm,
in fact I was incredibly underweight.
I
Uh,
see.
I just thought everybody hated me.
Oh, wow. And part of this stemmed, as you said earlier, from your interaction and relationship with your father, right?
I never was good enough. No, I was kind of born
No.
not good enough.
Uh-huh.
And it was not helped by the fact that my brother was good enough because he was a boy.
Yes, I understand.
So it kind of felt worse because why was he good enough and I wasn't? What
Yeah.
was wrong with being a girl?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I didn't even know you could like yourself, and I certainly
Yeah.
had never heard of self-love. I thought that was arrogance.
I see. I see. And so, yeah, that does not help when not only is he very judgmental, and I guess his set of expectations seems so far out of reach,
Yeah,
in his relationship with you, but here's your sibling over here where he can't do any wrong in
yeah, the
his
golden
father's
child.
eyes, and to me, yeah, that just kind of adds insult to injury, so to speak. And so, with not eating and becoming smaller, um, um, did you find that it fulfilled something from a self-esteem standpoint, or did it just not hurt as bad from your father's judging, um, when you became smaller?
A bit of both,
Okay.
actually. It hurt less because I didn't feel as much,
Right.
but with diet culture and societal ideals on body shape and body size and stuff, I got a
Yeah.
lot of validation for being so thin.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
people were like, "Oh, you're amazing! You're so thin, and you can." Because at the time it was like models were like waifs, like the heroin
Yes.
kind of look, and
Yes.
so healthy.
Mhm.
So I kind of was at the societal ideal, the waif like look, and so I did get a lot of validation from that. And because I had no
I see.
internal self worth, that did
Right.
give me some self worth.
Right. Right.
Um, and also people would say, "Oh, isn't it amazing how you can?" I spent loads of time baking all the time. I was feeding people, but never myself. And they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you make all this food and you can resist it. You're so amazing." And so I got lots of validation for that as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, society does really validate eating disorders. It's really, really sad.
Yeah, it's sad and can be quite tragic at times.
It's very
Yeah,
damaging.
I feel absolutely, absolutely. So, Julia, so now if we can kind of get back to returning from holidays, and
Okay.
and now returning from holidays gave you some time to try to figure this thing out. How can I get over this behavior problem, this psychological problem, this
Hmm.
neurological problem, with this eating disorder. What next steps do you take in pursuit of that? And then, and then, um, how does that, after helping yourself recover, how does that transition to the role you're doing now in helping others recover?
Okay, so there's a few parts of this. I
Hmm.
came back from holiday and I went to the doctor.
Hmm.
And over here we have the NHS. and they referred me to eating disorder services.
Okay.
And the wait for that, just for an initial assessment, is about 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't really going to be any help, because the state
No.
I was in and how my body was, I didn't have 2.5 years of life left in me.
Oh, wow. I see.
I was
You need
so
something
unwell.
now.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Um, so I'd been doing lots of research and listening to lots of podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard this amazing woman on a podcast talking about her own recovery
Mm-hmm.
and talking about self-love.
Yes.
And that was such an alien concept to me, because I hated myself. I
Mm-hmm.
hated everything about myself.
Mm.
And something about her just really drew me in. And everything she said, I just resonated with. And so I contacted her,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a recovery coach.
Mm-hmm.
And she took me on as a client and literally loved me to recovery.
Mm.
She showed me how to have compassion for myself, to
Yes.
be like, I'm not a bad person, I'm ill, and that's
Right.
okay, because everyone gets ill,
Mm-hmm.
and my past is not my fault,
Mm-hmm.
but it is my responsibility to change my future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had several months of working with her, and really, because I had nothing left to lose, because I'd hit rock bottom and I was unable to work, I wasn't able to go to the gym,
Right.
I was too weak to do much but lie on the sofa by this point.
Mm.
I just went completely all in. I did
Yeah.
absolutely everything she asked of me. I did
Good.
all the soul work,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
recovery became my full-time job.
Wonderful.
And when I started to come out the other side, life it had gone from like living in a black and white cage
Mm-hmm.
of, I suppose, my own making, where I didn't feel. And
Yes.
what I hadn't known is, because I didn't allow myself to feel any negative feelings. I
Mm.
never actually felt positive ones either.
Mm.
And even things like with my husband, although I intellectually knew he loved me, I didn't
Right.
know you could feel love.
So you felt quite numb,
Yeah.
actually. Interesting. Okay.
And so when I started to be nourished and really doing the soul work, and started to learn how to feel feelings,
Yes.
which actually isn't anywhere near as frightening as the fear of feeling the feelings.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I had.
feeling the feelings isn't as scary as feeling the feelings.
Yes. Yes. That makes sense. I had to think about that for a second, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from now.
Yeah. And I started to learn to love myself
Mm-hmm.
and to love who I was. And I realized that I had value, and I started to feel love, joy,
Mm-hmm.
excitement, happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole world went from this black and white cage to like I was surfing a rainbow. It
Yeah.
was amazing. And I never knew you could feel such joy, that you could wake up in the morning feeling excited for your day ahead.
Yes. Yes.
And this just was so poignant to me, and so important, that everybody needs to have a chance to feel this.
Yes.
That I did all coaching qualifications and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
started recovery coaching myself, because although there are some incredible people in eating disorder services and stuff, and they really do help, it's a really strange thing to get your head around, that somebody is scared of food. That's like saying, I'm scared of breathing.
Right.
It's something that you have to keep yourself alive. But I
Exactly.
was scared of it.
Yeah. Sure.
And so if you haven't had an eating disorder, it's really hard to get your head around what it feels like. You can do
Mm-hmm.
all the book learning in the world, but if you haven't felt the fear, haven't felt the feelings, or haven't heard the eating disorder voice screaming in your head, then it's really hard to kind of really connect with people that are trying to get out of an eating disorder.
Mm.
And
Uh,
so I use my lived experience and my compassion and my empathy and my love for people
mhm.
to help them recover. And I
Oh,
absolutely love it. It's
wow.
so fulfilling.
That is absolutely wonderful, Julia. One key thing you said that really resonated with me was um, the the whole revelation that you had. It was like a breakthrough of being able to love and
Yeah.
feeling love,
Mm,
feeling that you're not just giving love but receiving love, and thinking that everyone should have this feeling, everyone deserves to feel this way. And that seemed to be one of the key components that that has driven you to this certification, to where
yeah.
you can be the recovery coach for people with this uh, eating disorders,
Hmm.
to feel what you felt, right?
Everyone deserves to feel happy.
Yes, yes. And you've reflected quite a bit on your own journey and struggles, and I'm sure you've applied learning from those lessons, as well as your certification, training.
Probably more from my own life experience.
Is
That's
that
more
right?
helpful than any certifications,
Really
yes. Yeah,
extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Because as you said, you can have all the book smarts and all the book learning, but unless you have actually gone through feeling
yeah.
the depths of what someone with an eating disorder or illness feels,
Hmm.
you would never really know.
No, it's
Yeah,
because it makes no logical sense.
right. No, it doesn't. And at some point, there has to be some degree of self-awareness that as a coach, you help your clients come to that realization of, having the presence of mind of knowing where they are, what their circumstances are, and start to think about what they need to do to move in a more healthy, productive direction. What kind of role does self awareness play in coaching and guiding your clients through this illness?
A huge amount. Once
Hmm.
you're aware of a problem, you can start to find a solution. But if you're not
Yes.
aware that there's a problem there, it's really hard to find a solution.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Self awareness is huge, and so is learning to have self compassion.
I see. And accountability would play a role in there as well.
Yes, yeah, very much
Okay.
so. So
Gotcha.
with my coaching, we have like the weekly Zoom sessions, but
Okay.
there's unlimited WhatsApp support, which is full accountability and
Hmm.
also celebration, celebrating every win because our brains are wired for reward.
Yes.
And instead
Yes.
of the negative, I'm rubbish, I'm this, it's
Yeah.
if you can celebrate the wins, you want to repeat them. It's like giving a child a sticker chart.
Absolutely. We're wired to learn by association.
We are.
And yeah, yeah. And if it's something that we do that we get rewarded for, or that makes us feel good, then we want to gravitate towards that more frequent, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Fantastic. Hmm.
learning that fear is actually a lesson, that fear is something, it means that there's something you can learn and grow from.
Yes. Yes.
And
And
that was
and
a huge turning point.
oh, I bet that was a very huge turning point. I mean, instead of running away from fear, it kind of helps you maybe embrace it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Man, that's great. So, are there any societal distractions? You mentioned that earlier, but let's say, like you said, society rewards for being thin or
Hmm.
small, skinny, or not eating for long periods of time, and that's unfortunately a societal type of um, norm.
Yes.
that is conveyed upon people, whether they have eating disorders or not. But um, with your clients and guiding them through recovery, are there any societal distractions outside of those norms which may have encouraged them to have that lifestyle? um, what are some of societal distractions that that your clients may have while trying to recover, that could be a potential detriment to their efforts?
There's things like, I don't know if you have it there in the UK. We now have calories on the menus in restaurants.
Some restaurants we do, yeah.
Yeah, which is awful. It's
Hmm.
absolutely terrible.
Hmm.
That's really hard to cope with, going to
Yeah.
a restaurant and having that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so that's very difficult. People just talking about diets and weight, and people commenting. When
Yeah.
people comment on somebody else's body or what they're eating, they shouldn't do it. We've got no business doing that.
Right.
All bodies are beautiful, whatever size they are, whatever shape they are, whatever color they are, whatever
Yes.
ability they are,
Yes.
because they see us through our lives,
Yes.
and we shouldn't be ashamed of them. Um, so yeah, thoughtless comments
Okay.
on what people eat
Yeah.
and how much they weigh, and there's also, particularly for people that live in larger bodies, there's also some real restrictions like airline seats and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is so wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that can be very difficult. And there's also a lot of people with eating disorders don't believe that they're sick enough to get help,
Hmm.
because there's this image of the skeletal tiny frame of the anorexic, and that's what people
Hmm.
hold in their heads. But you can have an eating disorder in any size body, and you can be dangerously ill with an eating disorder in any size body.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so a lot of people are prevented from getting help, or even they ask for help and they go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, your BMI is not low enough." And
I was.
so they
Hmm.
don't get help. And that makes them sicker, because they then try and get to the low BMI so that they can get help.
Yes, I was about to ask if the BMIs were recognized in the UK.
Yeah,
Okay. How outdated is that? I mean, because I know and in the United States it's different, because I do believe, quite honestly, the United States is the country that has the most overweight um, citizens, people. Um, because of how much consumption of processed foods happens in the United States. I truly believe that, and I've seen it on several documentaries. But even still, with that, right, the body mass index, the BMI, um, based on height, weight, size, you're given a number, and that number is telling you whether it's within that BMI range for your height and weight or outside of the range. And in a lot of people's cases, it's above and outside the range based on their height and their weight. But there's so many other dimensions and variables and factors in a person's makeup that uh,
absolutely.
there's got to be some exceptions. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Health, well, first of all, BMI. Am I allowed to swear on your podcast?
Sure.
BMI is bullshit, misunderstood information.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like, or that's what it stands for. Okay.
And it was created by some man many years ago for insurance purposes, and it was designed for white American males.
Mm,
And that was literally the category it was designed for. And it
okay.
had no medical background at all.
Hmm.
And it was adopted by the medical field as something that people should be measured by. And that's not what it was designed for in the first place at all.
I see. Wow.
With the fact that there yes, there are people in bigger bodies that do inhibit them in
Yeah.
developed countries,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
some countries have this more than others.
Hmm.
But it's actually diet culture and the medical field that have created this by saying that we have to fit this certain standard. Because I'm getting on my high horse now. Um, our bodies have a set weight range that they will fight to stay at.
Yes.
And it's a bit like dogs. You wouldn't compare a Chihuahua to a Great Dane.
Right.
They're all dogs, but they're in different sized bodies. And
Hmm.
people are meant to come in different shapes and sizes. And we don't try and alter our height, we don't try and alter our foot size, but we
Hmm.
try and alter our weight. And every time you go on a diet, yes, sure, you might lose weight initially,
Hmm.
but unless you go into the hellhole of an eating disorder, most people cannot sustain a diet.
No.
And when they stop the diet, their body will bring them back to their set point range
Yes.
plus a bit,
Yes.
because the body
Yes.
always adds on a bit
Hmm.
to prepare for the next perceived famine. Your
I
body
see.
does not feel safe. So every time you diet, you will gain more back.
I see.
And that's a huge reason why there are so many people in bigger bodies, because they've spent all these years yo-yo dieting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even with foods, so even if you're not physically restricting, if
Hmm.
you are eating foods and shaming yourself for doing so and saying, I shouldn't be having this extra piece of cake, this
Right.
is
Right.
really bad, I
Yeah.
should have more willpower, then your brain doesn't know what's real and what's not. And so that is restriction.
Okay. I
And
see.
so your body, your biological defenses, because your body just wants to keep you alive, it will make you want to eat more because it thinks you're restricting.
Yes. Yes. Amazing. Absolutely fascinating. And I just couldn't articulate it the way you did, Julia, but I always felt like whenever I went on a diet, I got results,
Yeah,
but as soon as I stopped, it was that return back to that set number, that set size. It was a return back and then some, as you
yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Our bodies are amazing. They know what to do. When you need a wee, you go for a wee, right?
Yeah,
When you need to yawn, you yawn. When you
that's right.
need to stretch, you stretch.
Hmm.
When you're thirsty, you have a drink.
Yeah,
So why don't people trust their bodies when they're hungry? Our bodies know what they're doing
they
so
do.
much. We just need to trust them.
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I don't know, it's just the beautiful way God made our bodies. Just like how we have the antibodies in our system to fight off
Yeah,
infection and cold, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, I mean, our bodies, they're incredible and they allow us to do so many things, but they don't define who we are.
No,
We are not what our bodies look like at all.
so true. So true. Oh, this is Julia. This is fascinating. I mean, I could talk with you for hours about this. Um, let's talk about your podcast. Tell us a little bit about Fly to Freedom: Healing from an Eating Disorder.
Oh, yes. Well, um, it's a way of me helping raise awareness that
Hmm.
so many women, particularly, but men as well,
Hmm.
have lived kind of like, I suppose, a functional alcoholic. They have lived in a functional eating disorder for so
Yes.
long.
Yes.
And they just think that's their way of life and that it's too
Mm.
late to change. They're too old. There's no hope. This is just how it is now and they just have to suffer.
Mm.
And it's not true.
No.
Anyone can recover from an eating disorder and
Mm.
fully recover and live an incredible happy future. And so I'm just like on a mission to raise awareness, and I'm doing that partly through my podcast where I share my story. I had interview guests on their stories
Okay.
and
Yeah.
what they've done. I just had a brilliant interview with a young man who struggled with an eating disorder, and he's a nutritionist, but he's also very, very into fitness. And
Hmm.
the fitness industry has a lot of eating disorders and disordered eating within it, and body dysmorphia and exercise addiction. And so he's devised a program to help people eat intuitively and exercise to feel good, not to punish themselves and not to
Right.
try and manipulate their bodies.
Right.
Because exercise and moving our bodies should feel good. We should do it for pleasure and for strength to
Yes.
keep us going, because we do all need our muscles to work well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I interview some great guests. I also do solo podcasts
Hmm.
about the lies our eating disorder tells us.
Hmm. Hmm.
Are you sick enough? Strange behaviours within an eating disorder, and
Yeah.
just to try and show people that they're not alone and that there is a way out. Because I just so truly believe that
Yes.
anyone can recover. And it's also
Yes.
a lot about self love, because
Hmm.
we were born loving ourselves.
Hmm.
At our
Hmm.
hearts, we are pure love.
Hmm.
And babies and toddlers, they love their bodies. They run around, they gaze in awe and wonder at their hands and feet, and they rub their little tummies with joy and jiggle them, and they absolutely love it.
Right.
That's what we were designed to do. We were born loving ourselves and loving our bodies.
Hmm.
So returning to that self love that is our birthright is hugely important. And I do talk a lot about that in my podcast.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Sounds like an amazing podcast with great, great conversations with your awesome guests. Um, that is just fascinating, Julia. How can the listeners learn more about your great work and subscribe to your podcast?
Well, my podcast is on pretty much all the platforms, and it's
Okay.
called Fly to Freedom. I also post regularly on Instagram, which is at Julia Trehane, and lots of tips and things on there.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have a website, which is juliatrehane.com, and I also offer people who would like to recover but don't know if coaching is the right thing for them, because coaching is quite new in eating disorders.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I offer people a week's trial to see if they feel that coaching is good for them
Well,
and to
good.
see whether they're good for coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that as well.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Uh, I am more than happy to include that in the episode show notes.
Oh,
You
thank
know,
you.
the link to your podcast, the link to your website, and the language you just mentioned. About someone who wants to have a trial in this type of coaching, because it is new to the coaching space,
Yes.
newer than others, right? So if you're willing, I'm more than happy to include that in the episode show notes as well, Julia.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We will definitely do that. And again, I really, really enjoyed having you come on the show and share your insights and give us a nice, transparent glimpse into your journey and your struggles, right? Which led to who you are today, the heart for service you have, and the great care and compassion you have for helping other people come to the revelation that you've come to of being happy and loving and being loved. So, Julia, thanks once again for coming on.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute honour, and thank you for helping me to raise awareness of this.
Oh, absolutely. Likewise. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And hey, look, if you have a loved one who may not seem to be themselves, a coworker, a friend, a relative, a neighbor, they're just going through dark days of despair, not quite sure where to go or who to turn to. I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, we want our listeners to know two things. Number one, you're not alone. And number two, there is hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life. And it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. shoot us an email at roadsrediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.